There's been a lot of talk about prejudice in America. We'd like to explore the topic of prejudice with you for just a little while.
And what really is prejudice? We want to define that. And how can prejudice stop you from being all that you want to be, from fulfilling your dreams?
We'd like to know what you'd like to become when you grow up. Young man, what would you like to be?
I would like to be a lawyer.
A lawyer, like Thurgood Marshall. He was a descendant of slaves. His dad was a railroad porter. His mother, a teacher. But they instilled within him the desire, the respect for the Constitution and a love for the rule of law. And he became the first black Supreme Court justice in the United States.
I heard someone talking about being a doctor. Yes.
I would like to be a doctor.
Let me tell you about Dr. Charlita Guillory, granddaughter of a slave, first black female to become a doctor, to graduate from LSU's medical school. Today she teaches at Baylor's Medical School and runs the #2 on planet Earth neonatal ICU for the Houston Medical Center, overcoming all of the problems in her background.
I want to be an actress.
Let me tell you about Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee he's an Asian. When very few Asians were being shown as actors and actresses, Bruce Lee from California decided to, he lived in California for a while, was born in Seattle, Washington, and buried in Seattle. He broke the barriers for Asian actors and actresses and became a major star, overcoming all of those prejudices that people supposedly had.
Anybody else?
I want to be a businessman.
Man. There's a guy you've probably heard about, the rapper Jay-Z. He of course he got his notoriety as a rapper, as an entertainer, but he took advantage of some opportunities. Being born in the projects in Brooklyn, New York, he has founded 2 recording companies, an entertainment studio production company. He owns a restaurant, sports bar that is incredibly successful, has his own design clothing line business, and has just founded a sports agency where they represent professional athletes. As of May of this year, 2017, his net worth is $810 million. Pretty good businessman. And he overcame all of that, all of the obstacles, all of the prejudices to become a very successful businessman.
I saw your hand.
I want to be an athlete.
An athlete. Let me tell you about Jackie Robinson. Professional baseball started way back in the 1920s or somewhere around that time. I was just a little baby boy then. Well, maybe I wasn't born quite then yet. But in the 1940s, Jackie Robinson became the first minority player to break into major baseball. He overcame all of those prejudices. It was very difficult, but he broke the color barrier. And now anyone who wants to play baseball and is good at it can do it.
I want to be a scientist.
A scientist in the academic world. There's so many great and wonderful people that stand out. One that comes to mind is a Japanese immigrant, or born of Japanese immigrants, Michio Kaku. I hope I even said his name right. But a brilliant mind. One of the most famous physicists, academics in the world right now. And his parents, being immigrants from Japan during World War II, were forced into these detention centers because of the World War II. Everybody was afraid of the Japanese here. So his parents were interned in a relocation center, a prison camp, basically. But he overcame all of that For his high school science fair project, he built in his parents' garage an atomic accelerator because he was trying to create antimatter. And now he's written over 70 renowned publications in academic journals and many, many books, one of the most renowned physicists in the world today.
This whole thing about prejudice, as you have seen, isn't able to stop people from succeeding. But prejudice is a lot more important. It's a lot bigger than just race, isn't it? There are a lot of reasons why people don't like, or things that they don't like about other people.
What are some of the things that people don't like, what you might not like about other people?
I don't like Yankees from the North.
I don't like rich people.
I don't like tall people. I don't like people with big noses. I don't like people with bald heads.
I don't like big people.
I don't like short people.
I don't like skinny people.
All kinds of likes or dislikes that in people's, all kinds of prejudices. But what can prejudice really do? What one person thinks affect what you become, what you do? How can what somebody else thinks about you or any of us deter us from being all that we want to be?
Somebody is trying to separate us. Somebody is trying to drive a wedge in between us as Americans. That's what this whole thing about prejudice is all about. That's why there's so much talk about prejudice, because they're trying to turn you against me, him against you, her against you. We have to become better than that and bigger than that. We have to step over this little petty concept of prejudice.
In our society right now, we're facing the whole issues with the cops versus black folks, between the Confederates and the blacks, Trump and the Hispanics, and then we've got the NFL against the world. Seems like but there's so much tension. And what I want you to see is that there are some people. There are people in the media. There are people in politics. There's people in the educational system that are trying to influence society. They're trying to manipulate society. They're not basing what they say on reality, but they're trying to incite emotions and feelings to create a false reality, to present this illusion that is intended to separate us, trying to create the illusion of a division that really doesn't even exist. And we've got to come against that.
You probably wonder what kind of people would do this? Why would they do this? Let me tell you, there are two kinds of people. First, there are politicians who benefit from the separation. Lyndon Johnson, a president of the United States during the 1960s, in 1964, 1965, he signed a civil rights bill that was supposed to benefit black folk. And let me tell you what he said when he signed it. He said, I'm going to give them a little something. Not enough to make a difference. These are his words. Not enough to make a difference, but just enough to keep them quiet. I'll have those, and he used the N-word, I'll have those blanks voting Democrat for the next 200 years. So the one kind of people are political charlatans who benefit from it. And there's another kind. And let me read to you a quote from Booker T. Washington. This is what he said in 1911, long before this period in American history. Over 100 years ago, this is what he said. There's a class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances, like upset about slavery, because they do not want to lose their jobs. These people these race hustlers existed back over 100 years ago, and they exist today. There's a class of people, as Booker T. Washington said, who make a living from keeping people separated and from bringing up things like stuff that may have happened 200, 300 years ago that we should now be upset about.
What we want your generation to understand is it doesn't matter. You may not be able to change what somebody else thinks. I may not be able to change the opinion of somebody who doesn't like my balding head or that I'm putting on weight. I may not be able to change what they think, but what they think can't stop me from attaining my goals. What somebody else thinks about you, you may not be able to change their prejudice, but their prejudice cannot stop you from the success that you are availed here in the United States of America.
Absolutely right.
I think that's a wrap. Our country has never been perfect. America has quite a storied past. Slavery has been a blight on our nation. And for me, as a Texan, a very proud Texan, it was an embarrassment to learn that the pro-slavery issue was a factor in the war for independence for Texas.
Native Americans were slaughtered, driven off their lands, placed in prison camps called reservations.
Many Irish were brought here as indentured servants, as slaves, and forced to live in horrible conditions for the privilege of being in the United States of America.
In Africa, tribes still practice mass murder. The Tutsi and the Tutu kill each other. The Yemen, the Somali are slaughtering each other daily.
Millions of Chinese flee their homeland every year, but the Chinese government offers a bounty for information to their citizens that leads to the deportation of any illegal immigrants.
In India, the centuries-old battle between Buddhism and Islam still rages.
Throughout Latin America, failed socialist regimes and the drug cartels have robbed people of opportunity and displaced literally millions of families.
In Ireland, Protestants and Catholics bomb and shoot each other. America may not be perfect yet, but everyone wants to come to America. There is an answer to all of this, a solution, and it's a two-part solution. America is like a canoe. We're all crammed into a small boat adrift on the open sea. This boat must be kept afloat. You see, if his part of the canoe sinks, then my part of the canoe sinks and we both drown. If my part of the canoe sinks, then his part of the canoe sinks.
I'm in trouble.
And we both drown. We must work together. We must protect each other. America, the first part of the solution is unity. We must remain unified. We must be like the 5 separate fingers of one hand, united into a single American fist. We cannot let charlatans pull us apart. We must remain like the 5 fingers on a single hand, separate, individual, but united into a single, strong American fist. United.
The second part of the solution is our godliness, the truth around which we are united. Our nation was founded on certain truths that were self-evident. The Bible teaches us. Jesus, when asked, "What's the greatest commandment?" He said, "To love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind." Then he said, "The second is like unto it, to love your neighbor as yourself." Jesus later taught that same principle in the Golden Rule, to do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And Jesus said, if you'll do these, then you have fulfilled all the law and the prophets. He was saying, if you don't do these, it doesn't matter what else you do. But if you'll do these two things, everything else will fall into place. We need unity, and we need godliness. We need a respect for God. We need a people to be unified around the truth that God loves us all. I believe very strongly in the adage, we need to hate the sin but love the sinner. But the sin we need to hate the most is our own. The sinner we need to love the most is the one who has wronged me. If we'll put those principles into practice, we will be unified, we will succeed, we will find the peace and unity in our country that we all long for.